joining me, and I really do appreciate your time in sunny Bali, I believe.
Absolutely, yeah, my pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure.
Brilliant. I mean, how did you first get to be working with Gary in 92, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I was up until that point, I had my own band called One Nation, and I'd been touring and writing 2 albums and sort of trying to be the big rock star. And that sadly, at the time, especially, came to an end. And I was kind of putting myself out for hire with as a kind of producer, arranger, just sort of trying to find a way to make a living, basically. And I was working with, I think I'd just done one song with Catherine Zeta-Jones, with this guy, Jeff Wayne, remember War of the Worlds?
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, it was sort of quite good that I had sort of a little bit of work. And then Keith Beauvais, who was the guitar player before me, who's a great, oh God, have I disappeared again?
You have. You're back.
That's my wife in England. Yeah, so you can edit that. Are you going to edit it, or how's that work?
It doesn't matter, one way or the other.
Yeah. So Keith called me up and said, look, I've just been offered a tour. And I knew that he played with Gary. I'd seen him play with Gary. He said, I've been offered this tour with Tamsin Archer. Do you remember her? I think it was called Satellites, or I can't remember her song. It was a big hit song, and he's quite a pop musician as well as he's a brilliant guitar player. He goes, do you fancy, I'm gonna have to go and do this tour and not work with Gary. Do you fancy meeting up with Gary to see about doing a tour? So he arranged it. I went up to Gary's house, and we met and seemed to get on really well. And next thing I knew, I'm kind of rehearsing to go on tour, which was really exciting for me, having had a band and always having been the sort of the front man. I was the front man of my own band, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, I can just be at the side playing guitar solos and not have all that responsibility of, is my voice going to break, and not have to talk about anything other than, you know, just play guitar. So it was an absolute revolution for me. Like, oh my God, this is so much fun. So that first tour I did was super, super exciting. I mean, I just loved it. We were there with a really good friend of mine, Susie Webb, who I got in, who sang background vocals. Yeah, so yeah, thanks to Keith Beauvais, it sort of kicked it all off.
Where was Gary? Because that was on the Dream Corrosion tour, wasn't it? And
yes, that's right, yeah.
Because I remember going to that, and your presence was a lot different to what I'd been used to at a Numan show.
In what way?
Well, you were full of energy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, the guitar was becoming, or was very overpowering with everything else for a change. Was Gary aware of how you were going to do everything?
No, I suppose, I mean, it's very interesting when you have a kind of a startup relationship, you know, like any relationship, you're sort of trying stuff out and you're both getting to know each other. And I think that, and I've only noticed this pattern as I've gotten older, but when I often join and work with artists when they're at a slight kind of, I wonder what I'm doing point.
Yeah.
And I think my energy and my kind of enthusiasm kind of fills a potential gap that maybe that artist is feeling. And so I'm very good at not filling the gap if it's not needed. But I think with Gary, he was sort of thinking, I've done the same thing. I want to try and reinvent it. He wanted to be more guitar-y. And so it was just my excitement and enthusiasm to be doing the tour with him. I'd been a Gary Numan fan when I was much younger. I'd been to see him do on the Cars tour, so well early on, and so I was kind of aware of the big show. So yeah, I think he fed off of having a different energy and having sort of maybe a bit more of a collaborator than an employee, which again, it wasn't a plan. I never thought I was going to make a record with him, or but I think it was like, oh, this is really good. This makes life a bit easier for me. I can kind of, you know, that someone else can have a bit of excitement, and I can just concentrate on what I'm thinking about today. Was, I think, his point.
Because you produced Machine and Soul with Gary, didn't you?
Yeah. So we kind of we finished that tour, and Gary said, "I've got a record to make. I don't really know what to make. Do you want to help me make the record?" And so, you know, I was kind of, and I think really that was my first production properly outside of me with my band. So I was kind of ready to be able to do it, and it was the first time that I experienced being a producer where you're not, where not being the artist means that you can help the artist to feel relaxed about the process of making the record. Because I knew what it was like to be the artist, and you're thinking, oh, good, is it good enough? Yeah. Have I done a good enough vocal? Am I doing, you know? And Gary was sort of, as all artists are, is kind of wondering all those questions. And I think I was able to go, no, we're just doing, and I think I used to have a catchphrase of like, you know, they're just demos. It doesn't matter. We're not going to release anything until we're happy. So let's just have fun doing this. Which sort of, and I've used that a lot in the years of working with people, is to just sort of create a really safe and relaxed environment to create, especially for the artist, you know.
Because Gary's always said he doesn't like that album. He says it's a brilliant album, but it's not a Numan album.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know that he'd said that, but I can imagine he would. I guess that I've got better at it, but I guess, yeah, but maybe, I don't mean I took over, but I guess because he wasn't sure what he wanted to do, there was that space that I'm talking about that enabled me to kind of do more of what I wanted to do and what I thought I'd like Gary to do. So I guess in that sense, I had maybe a bit too much of my own voice because I was new to that type of production. So I was kind of, yeah, I was thinking, you know, oh, it'd be great to do this. And we were kind of listening to Michael Jackson, and we were listening to Teddy Riley's productions. And so we kind of went off on a bit of a chancing, you know, secondary path, which maybe on reflection for Gary wasn't quite what he wanted, but he was happy at the time, you know.
Yeah, I think to be fair, oh God, I forgot what I was going to say. Gary has also said he was at that point in his career of near enough giving up because he no longer had a clue what to do. So,
right.
You know, so I think sometimes it's a bit unfair to say he doesn't like the album, because some of the songs on there are, well, they're all good, but some of the songs are pure Numan anyway. So I don't quite honestly know why he dishes it quite so much, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, but I could imagine that that's what it is. It's like, you know, he's quite a singular artist that produces himself, you know, historically, especially the earlier stuff. He's got a good sense of who he is. And maybe that moment was when he lost it a bit. Yeah. And so he kind of diluted a little bit of the Numan thing. But, you know, I'm proud of it. I'm proud to have been involved in it, you know.
But you became quite good friends though, didn't you? Well, because I think you had a motorbike, so Gary went and got himself one. Yeah,
I went flying with him, and we did, you know, when you have that kind of intimate creative relationship with someone, you spend, you know, you live, when I lived up there, I lived there for months and months, and we had a great relationship, friendship. I had really great times on tour, and yeah, I value that time a lot.
Because you actually did do played on one song on Sacrifice album, didn't you? I forget which one it's called now, but you're credited for being on that album.
Yeah, I am on that album. I can't remember. I thought I was on more than that. I should actually look it up. I can't remember. Sorry, because I think I did the Sacrifice tour.
Yeah.
Because what was that the album after Machine and Soul?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So I did another tour with Gary, and one of my great memories of that was that I think we played 2 nights at Hammersmith Odeon, and I don't know if you were at one of those, but when he spoke about it, he made it sound like he was going to retire.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And it was bloody brilliant. It was actually I remember it so because he hadn't said anything to us about it, and he was kind of walking around saying, sometimes you start to wonder what you're doing, and I started to wonder why I'm doing this, and then he did that, and I realized I'm doing it because of you lot, or whatever,
Yeah.
Paraphrasing him, and it was like, and then we played Our Friends Electric. It's bloody fantastic. Anyway, so I did that whole tour, and I think that really, I was, when it went back to be, I think after my kind of sort of excitement of being involved and having an influence, it kind of went back into the darker, maybe less guitar, and the second tour for me, it was just pretty heavyweight in terms of the levels of volume. It was like, and Gary was on his own path, and it just felt like we'd sort of had our peak of connection and musical connection, should I say, and it was time to part ways. So we finished that tour, and I think he felt the same. There was a bit of a kind of businessy thing that went on with his dad, where I think we did a couple of 2 gigs in one night, and I think I was like, shouldn't we get paid a second amount of money on these gigs? And he kind of argued the point, and then begrudgingly gave me some money and docked some money because I went to a dentist or something for a rehearsal. So it all got that bit of it got a little bit little bit fraught. But I saw Gary a few years later at the Ivor Novello Awards in a toilet. Actually, we were in the toilet at the Grosvenor House Hotel, and we had a good old chat. And I'd kind of gone on and done I think I was in the middle of a tour with Sting, and he was kind of Gary said, "I've been watching you. You've done really well. Of course, of course, you're going to do well." And was very, very generous to me. And so we sort of reconnected then. But I haven't seen him since. I went to see a gig at Shepherd's Bush Empire maybe 2 years ago.
Could have been, yeah.
But I wasn't able to see him after the show. I had to leave. But I really enjoyed seeing that show, actually.
Yeah, he's gone a lot back more into the guitar sound than just the pure synth. He's sort of gone full circle on that one again. So which is great. But I think that's all we need to do, Kipper. I'll tell you what, after Numan, you then started working with Sting.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
Well, after Gary, I did this whole album with Catherine Zeta-Jones and worked with this. I sort of went into working for Jeff Wayne, and I did a lot of stuff with him, and it was great. It was kind of studio based, and it was quite good because I was learning a lot. And then through a friend of mine, I went to work with a film composer called Trevor Jones, who was a big Hollywood film composer, who'd done he'd done parts of The Last of the Mohicans, and he did Notting Hill, and he'd done Cliffhanger, and he was a big guy, big classical composer. And I worked with him for about 2 years. It was absolutely amazing, and I thought this was my new thing. And I did a few of my own films under the umbrella of his company. And then we did this one Sharon Stone film called The Mighty, and the director of that film, his wife was friends with Sting's wife, and they got Sting to kind of come in and do the end title song of the film. And Sting used some of the music that I'd done on the end of this film to write a song to. So he invited me and a couple of the other guys down to kind of watch him record it, which was phenomenal. I was just there as a kind of voyeur to go, oh my God, here you are in the kind of the royalty of the rock world,
Yeah.
And And during that session, I got a kind of little chance to have a say about, you know, just basically helping him out with some harmonies or something. And thought nothing of it, you know, I just kind of, he liked the idea, but it was just a moment, you know, like a simple idea. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, yeah, he rang me out. I was completely unemployed, decorating my flat at the time in Hazelmere, and the phone rang, and I let the answer phone take it. And yeah, and it was sort of going, "Hey, are you there? You know, I just want to have a chat with you about. I've got an album to do. I wonder if you fancied helping me out." I sort of fall off the ladder, run through, pick up the phone, like, "Hey, yeah." You know, pretended that I, of course, was really busy. I didn't say I was painting my flat. And yeah, and I went out to Italy for a couple of weeks to just collaborate a bit with him. And then I ended up, yeah, working with him for about 7 years. So on, yeah, 3 albums. So it was an amazing, yeah, only my dear mum, who's not around anymore, my mum said when I left to go to Italy for 2 weeks, she went, "You better pack more clothes," she says, "because he's going to like you and you're not going to be coming back." She was so bright.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's very sweet, very sweet. I think.